Hey everyone, this is Quad Culture and you're watching The Square. Let's talk about Saoirse Ronan, one of the most underrated actresses of our time. So, Saoirse Ronan has been nominated for the Oscar 4 separate times. This is an insane number that is almost hard to wrap your head around, considering the fact that she's only 30 years old, and this year she has 2 movies in The Outrun and Blitz that are both expected to be Oscar hopefuls and Oscar favorites in some cases, with Blitz looking at her in a supporting role. So let's talk about Saoirse Ronan, right? Because she somehow has become one of the most underrated young actresses working in Hollywood, and I think it's because she's not necessarily in these projects that I think have made her more renowned for her fame. So looking at people like her contemporaries or people like Zendaya. So obviously Zendaya has been a part of like Dune, and she's been a part of, Challengers and Euphoria. These projects that are really popular with younger audiences. I think you'll do the same thing with Florence Pugh, who I think is maybe her most close contemporary, with even a movie like We Live in Time that's going to be more popular than I think anything Saoirse Ronan makes this year, if maybe not as high of quality, but more popular. She's also been in movies like Midsommar that was really popular, as well as a lot of different other projects, even looking at like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I think has obviously brought her a lot of different kinds of popularity. And the interesting thing about Saoirse Ronan is that I would say arguably, if you look at like her entire class of actress, so whether you're looking at people that are a little bit older than her, like Margot Robbie, or even, like I mentioned before, someone that's a little bit younger than her, like Florence Pugh, I think she's by far the most talented of this group. And I think it's because she's a chameleon, right? We've seen her take on, different roles, like even this year in a role like The Outrun, where she's taking on, like, it's completely its own thing. It's a memoir, based on a book about addiction, but then she's also played these extremely iconic characters like Jo March, and these are roles that she is in all of these roles she's absolutely thrived. From a young age, she's been extremely good in movies. When you look at movies like Atonement, like talk about a movie where you're going to hate a little kid like more than anything, and then even in a movie like Lovely Bones, like those movies are on the complete opposite side of the spectrum for how you're supposed to feel about that character. And I mean, she's amazing in those, and she was like younger than I think 15 in both of those movies. And so Saoirse Ronan is rapidly becoming one of the most talented actresses that we have working today. Yet she still finds herself having less attention. And I think it's because she's in these movies that aren't these huge box office hits, that aren't like these huge Oscar darling favorites, but yet her performances always seem to power through. Now, the 2 movies that I think are the biggest exceptions to these rules are her 2 collaborations with Greta Gerwig. When you look at both Little Women and Lady Bird, these are probably her 2 most popular films, but also those characters are completely separate. Her character as Lady Bird is completely separate from her character as Jo March, and yet she still is like almost the gravitational force of both of these movies. I'm really excited. There are some reports that she might be in the Narnia movie with Greta Gerwig, and I think that'll bring her a lot more fame. But as I was doing my research, as I was looking at the Oscars that she lost, all of them seemed pretty fair, right? Like she was losing to people like Brie Larson in Room, and Tilda Swinton and Michael Clayton, and just things like that you're like, I get it. Like there's maybe some arguments to be made that she should have won, but I do find it interesting. Like, I think the year that maybe she should have won was the year that I think it was 2020, where she lost to Renee Zellweger for Judy. Obviously I haven't seen that movie, but there's a lot of stuff that, either she should have won or Scarlett Johansson should have won for Marriage Story. Regardless of how you feel about that, you're looking at somebody who has not only been in Oscar categories, but to prove an overall point, is somebody that has been argued that she should have won in some of those categories. And I mean, to lose 4 Oscars at 30 years old, like her career is obviously way ahead of her for what she can still do, even in the fact that she could, I don't think she will, but she could potentially get nominated for 2 films this year. And so why I wanted to take a visit to Saoirse Ronan in The Square is to sort of talk about how she is a chameleon, right? Whether it's Jo March, Lady Bird, her character in Brooklyn, or her character in Atonement, these are characters that cover a wide different variety of different things, different times in the world, different sensibilities, different motivations, and yet she shines in all of these roles. And rarely do you watch a Saoirse Ronan movie where there are bad performances or where the movie is poor because of her. Like, even if you look at a movie like Foe, a movie that came out last year with Paul Mescal and Saoirse Ronan, it's a relatively boring movie, but yet you still can't help but be drawn in by the fact that, like, Saoirse Ronan is so good and Paul Mescal is so good and they have such good chemistry together. So Saoirse Ronan is one of those actresses that I don't think gets enough credit for, that she should be appointment viewing just because of how strong she is at acting, just because of how good she is at acting. And my hope with talking about Saoirse Ronan is that she slowly becomes an actress that we give more credit to, and that she becomes as popular as her contemporaries, that even though she hasn't starred in these big popular movies like Margot Robbie and like Florence Pugh, that she is recognized for her talent and her ability. And I guess the hope is that she'll find herself in a really popular role that will garner her maybe a little bit more attention, because I think she really deserves it. So Saoirse Ronan, if you haven't seen The Outrun or Blitz, go see both of those movies, because like I said, Saoirse Ronan should be appointment viewing to go see their movies. And let's take a second just to appreciate how good she is, because I think we don't do this enough. Like, we see these actors that are really good and we appreciate their performances in the moment, but we don't think about them later. But when doing my rewatch for this video with Atonement, Brooklyn, The Outrun, Lady Bird, and Little Women, I was just so transfixed by how she can do so many different things so well, how she can be an upbeat character and a sad character and everything in between. And I think she represents the future of what, you know, this Oscar acting could look like. And I think if you look at her, the future is pretty bright. So thank you for coming to the Square, and have a great rest of your day.